The morning sun beat down on Fort Carson's training grounds as military vehicles rolled through the main gate. Operation Iron Hawk was about to begin, the most prestigious joint military exercise of the year. Special forces from every branch would compete, train, and prove their worth over the next 7 days. Master Sergeant Rachel Hayes stepped out of the transport truck, her boots hitting the dusty Colorado ground with purpose. At 34, she carried herself with quiet confidence, her brown hair pulled back in a regulation bun beneath her patrol cap. The scar running along her left jawline told stories she never shared. Rachel had fought tooth and nail for her spot in this exercise. Her commanding officer had submitted her name 3 times before it was finally accepted. Even then, she'd overheard the selection committee's doubts. A woman in Iron Hawk, this isn't some public relations stunt. Now, standing among Navy SEALs, Green Berets, and Marine Raiders, she felt their eyes on her. She was one of only 4 women among 200 participants, and the only one from a regular Army unit. Well, what do we have here? A voice boomed across the staging area. Rachel turned to see Admiral James "Hammer" Morrison, the legendary SEAL commander who would oversee Iron Hawk. His weathered face bore the marks of 30 years in special operations. Behind him stood his team of instructors, all elite operators with combat ribbons covering their chests. The Admiral's steel-gray eyes landed on Rachel. A smirk crossed his face as he approached, his boots crunching on gravel. The other soldiers formed a semicircle, sensing entertainment. "You lost, soldier?" Morrison asked, his voice carrying that particular tone reserved for those deemed out of place. "No, sir. Master Sergeant Hayes reporting for Iron Hawk, sir." Rachel's voice was steady, her posture perfect. Morrison circled her slowly like a shark. "Master Sergeant, huh? And what exactly is a regular Army sergeant doing in my exercise? Did someone in admin make a mistake?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. Rachel's jaw tightened, but she remained at attention. "No mistake, sir. I qualified through proper channels." "Proper channels." Morrison repeated the words like they tasted sour. He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath. "Tell me, Master Sergeant Hayes, what's your MOS? Cook, supply clerk, maybe you're here to handle our paperwork." More laughter, louder this time. 11 Bravo, sir, infantry." Morrison's eyebrows shot up in mock surprise. "Infantry, a female grunt," he turned to his instructors. "Gentlemen, we have a unicorn among us." Chief Petty Officer Derek Lawson, Morrison's second-in-command, stepped forward. "Admiral, maybe she's here for the sensitivity training portion." His grin was sharp as a blade. The crowd erupted. Even some of the other women chuckled, eager to distance themselves from the perceived weak link. Rachel's hands clenched into fists at her sides, but her face remained stone. She'd heard it all before. Every deployment, every training exercise, every promotion board. The jokes, the doubts, the tests designed to break her. "So tell me, Hayes," Morrison continued, enjoying the show, "what makes you think you can hang with Tier 1 operators? You ever been in combat? Ever had to carry a wounded teammate across 2 miles of hostile territory? Ever gone 72 hours without sleep while being hunted by enemy forces?" "Yes, sir." Her response was quiet but firm. Morrison paused, studying her face. "Yes, to which one?" "All of them, sir." The laughter died down slightly. Morrison's smirk faltered for just a second before returning full force. "Right, I'm sure your little fob security missions were very intense." He turned to address the entire group. "Listen up. Iron Hawk isn't about participation trophies or diversity quotas. Half of you won't make it past day 3. By day 5, only the elite remain, and by day 7, he looked directly at Rachel, only the worthy earn the Iron Hawk designation. He leaned in close to Rachel, his voice dropping. "I give you 2 days, Hayes, maybe less. This isn't your neighborhood Army base. This is where warriors are separated from wannabes." "Understood, sir." Morrison straightened up, addressing everyone again. "You have 1 hour to settle into barracks. First evolution begins at 1300. Full ruck march, 20 miles, mountainous terrain. Anyone who falls out is gone. No second chances." His eyes found Rachel again. "No special accommodations." As the crowd dispersed, Rachel heard the whispers following her. "She won't last the first march. Why do they even bother sending them? Waste of a slot." Rachel grabbed her gear bag and headed for the barracks. She'd been assigned to Building 7, a squat concrete structure that had seen better days. Inside, she found her bunk, the one furthest from the door, beneath a broken air vent that would blow cold air all night. As she unpacked, 3 male soldiers entered, Navy SEALs judging by their tridents. "You might want to save yourself the embarrassment," one said, not unkindly. "Morrison's going to push you until you break. It's not personal. He just doesn't believe women belong in combat roles." "Appreciate the concern," Rachel said, continuing to organize her gear. "I'm serious. I've seen him run out Division I athletes. Olympic swimmers, you seem tough, but this is different." Rachel finally looked up, meeting his eyes. "I didn't come here to quit." The SEAL shrugged. "Your funeral." Alone again, Rachel sat on her bunk and pulled out a worn photo from her wallet. 5 soldiers in full combat gear, faces dirty, weapons at the ready. Afghanistan, 6 years ago. Of the 5 in the photo, only she had made it home. She traced her finger over the faces of her squad. Martinez, who'd taken a sniper's bullet meant for her. Johnson, who'd held the perimeter alone for 20 minutes while she dragged 2 wounded contractors to safety. Williams and Parker, lost to an IED on what should have been their last patrol. They'd called her their guardian angel, said she had 9 lives and the devil's own luck, but luck had nothing to do with it. Every scar on her body had been earned saving others. Every medal hidden in her footlocker at home represented blood and sacrifice the Admiral couldn't imagine. She tucked the photo away and began preparing her ruck. 20 miles through mountains would be brutal, but she'd done worse. In Afghanistan, she'd carried Martinez's body 5 miles through hostile territory after the medevac couldn't land. In Iraq, she'd marched 30 miles through desert heat to reach a forward operating base after their convoy was destroyed. Outside, she heard vehicles arriving, more participants flooding in. Through the window, she watched Admiral Morrison holding court, his booming laugh carrying across the compound. He was telling war stories, each one more dramatic than the last. Rachel knew his type. The old guard who believed combat was a gentleman's club, where women were guests to be tolerated but never accepted as equals. He'd probably never served alongside female soldiers in actual combat. Never seen them bleed for their brothers, never watched them carry twice their weight to save a life. That was about to change. As noon approached, soldiers began gathering their gear for the march. Rachel double-checked her pack, 65 pounds, properly balanced. Her boots were broken in, her feet already taped to prevent blisters. She'd learned long ago that preparation was half the battle. Walking to the staging area, she passed a bulletin board displaying photos of previous Iron Hawk graduates. Row after row of male faces, stern and proud. At the bottom, a plaque read, "Iron Hawk, where warriors earn their wings." She paused, studying the faces. Good men, no doubt. Warriors who'd earned their place through sweat and determination. But they weren't the only ones who'd bled for their country. They weren't the only ones who'd carried the weight of leadership in combat. Having second thoughts, Rachel turned to find Chief Lawson behind her, arms crossed. "No, Chief." "Smart woman would. Admiral wasn't joking about pushing you out. He takes Iron Hawk seriously, doesn't want it watered down." "Neither do I." Lawson studied her, perhaps seeing something in her eyes that gave him pause. "You know, I did some checking. Your file's pretty thin. No special schools, no advanced training. Just a regular grunt who somehow talked her way into this." Rachel remained silent. "Nothing to say. Nothing that would change your mind, Chief." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're right about that. See you at the starting line, Hayes. Try to keep up." As he walked away, Rachel touched the scar on her jaw, a souvenir from a Taliban fighter who'd gotten too close during a night raid. She'd killed him with her knife after her rifle jammed, then continued clearing the building, blood streaming down her face. That mission wasn't in her official file. Neither were dozens of others. Classified operations didn't make it into personnel records. Black Ops medals stayed black. The 1 o'clock horn sounded across the base. Time for Iron Hawk to begin. The starting line was a mass of camouflaged bodies, each soldier checking straps, adjusting weight, preparing for pain. Rachel stood among them, feeling the familiar pre-mission energy crackling through the air. Admiral Morrison strutted before them like a general reviewing troops. 20 miles, people, straight up into those mountains around Devil's Peak and back. Time limit is 4 hours. Fall behind, you're out. Drop your pack, you're out. Accept help, you're out. His eyes found Rachel again. And for those who think this is just a nature hike, Sergeant Rodriguez here will demonstrate what happens when you don't take Iron Hawk seriously. A stocky Marine stepped forward, and Morrison sucker punched him in the stomach. Rodriguez doubled over but stayed on his feet. "Enemy contact can come at any time," Morrison announced. "My instructors have full authority to test your readiness. Stay alert, stay strong, or go home." The starting pistol fired, and 200 soldiers surged forward. Rachel settled into a steady pace, not fighting for position. Let the young bucks burn themselves out showing off. She'd learned economy of movement in places where wasted energy meant death. The first 5 miles were deceptive, rolling hills that lured soldiers into pushing too hard. Rachel watched several Rangers blast past her, practically running. They'd pay for that overconfidence when the real climbing began. At mile 7, the trail turned vertical. The temperature had climbed to 90 degrees, and the altitude started claiming victims. Rachel passed 3 soldiers on the side of the trail, gasping, their faces beat red. "Quitting already, Hayes?" Chief Lawson appeared beside her, barely breathing hard despite the climb. 2 other SEAL instructors flanked him, moving like mountain goats. "Just getting started, Chief." "Good, because this is where it gets interesting." Without warning, Lawson's companion swept Rachel's legs. She hit the ground hard, her pack driving the air from her lungs. Before she could react, they'd zip-tied her hands behind her back. "Enemy capture scenario," Lawson announced. "You have 2 minutes to free yourself and continue, or you're disqualified." They jogged away, leaving her alone on the trail. Other soldiers passed, some glancing down with sympathy, others with satisfaction. No one stopped. The rules were clear. Rachel rolled onto her side, ignoring the sharp rocks digging into her ribs. She'd been tied up before, for real, not training. Taliban fighters had done worse than zip ties. She dislocated her thumb with a practiced motion, slipped one hand free, then popped the joint back into place. The whole process took 40 seconds. Back on her feet, she resumed climbing. Her hands throbbed, but pain was just information. File it away, keep moving. At mile 10, the trail crested a ridge. The view was spectacular, Colorado mountains stretching endlessly, but Rachel barely noticed. Below, she could see other soldiers struggling up the path she'd just climbed. Above, the trail disappeared into a series of brutal switchbacks. That's where she found the ambush. 6 soldiers were down, instructors standing over them. Mock casualty exercise, participants had to carry the wounded up the mountain or leave them behind and fail. Rachel arrived as a Green Beret was trying to fireman carry a 200-pound SEAL. He made it 20 yards before collapsing. "Mission failure," an instructor announced. "Both of you are out." Rachel assessed the scene. 4 casualties remained, with more soldiers arriving every minute. Most took one look and kept moving, unwilling to risk their own success. She knelt beside the nearest casualty, a Marine easily weighing 180. "You conscious?" "Yeah, but I can't help. Those are the rules." Rachel shrugged off her pack, grabbed the Marine's gear, and distributed the weight between them. "I didn't ask for help. I'm taking equipment for tactical advantage." Before anyone could protest, she'd rigged a makeshift travois using paracord and 2 sturdy branches. It took 3 minutes of precious time, but when she finished, she could drag the Marine and both packs with relative efficiency. "That's cheating," another participant complained. "That's adapting," the instructor corrected, making notes on his clipboard. Rachel dragged her casualty up 500 yards of switchbacks, her legs screaming, sweat stinging her eyes. At the top, she found a medical checkpoint, the official end of the casualty scenario. "Time hack 13 minutes, the medic announced. "Fastest evacuation today." Rachel drank water, stretched her cramping muscles, and pressed on. Miles 11 through 15 were a blur of pain and determination. The trail wound through dense forest, over creek crossings, up rock scrambles that required both hands and feet. She caught up to the Rangers who'd blazed past her early. One was vomiting beside the trail. Another had removed his boots, his feet a mess of blisters. "Told you to pace yourself," she said, offering him moleskin from her kit. He looked up surprised. "Why help me?" "Because that's what soldiers do." She left him tapping his feet and continued climbing. At mile 17, the trail finally crested and began descending. This was where tired legs failed, where foolish soldiers let gravity pull them into uncontrolled speed. Rachel picked her way carefully, using trekking poles for stability. Her special operations medical training had taught her that more injuries happen going downhill than up. Blown knees, twisted ankles, devastating falls. Speaking of which, the scream echoed off canyon walls. Rachel rounded a bend to find chaos. A soldier had fallen 20 feet off a cliff edge, landing hard on a narrow ledge. Real accident, not training. Everyone had stopped, unsure what to do. The injured soldier, a young Air Force pararescueman, was conscious but clearly hurt. "Radio for medevac," someone suggested. "No time," an instructor said. "That ledge is unstable. He needs immediate extraction." Several SEALs were rigging ropes, but their anchor points were questionable. Rachel watched for 10 seconds, then acted. "You're doing it wrong," she announced, dropping her pack. Admiral Morrison himself appeared from nowhere. "Excuse me, these are Navy SEALs, Hayes. I think they know rope work." "Not for this terrain, sir. That sandstone won't hold a dynamic load." She was already moving, identifying better anchor points. "I need 3 volunteers for a modified Z-rig pulley system." "And you're suddenly a technical rescue expert?" Morrison's voice dripped sarcasm. "Yes, sir." Rachel didn't elaborate, too busy directing the rescue. She rappelled down to the injured soldier with medical supplies, stabilized his neck, and supervised his extraction. The entire operation took 12 minutes. As the pararescueman was loaded onto a real medevac helicopter that had been summoned, he grabbed Rachel's hand. "Thanks, Sergeant. Where'd you learn technical rescue?" "Here and there," she said, already heading back to the trail. Morrison watched her go, his expression unreadable. He turned to Lawson. "Add 10 minutes to her time for the delay." "Sir, she stopped to save." "I don't care. No special accommodations, remember." Rachel heard the exchange but didn't react. She had 3 miles left and 40 minutes to complete them. Even with the time penalty, she could make it. The final stretch was pure mental warfare. Her body had moved past pain into numbness. Every step required conscious effort. Around her, other soldiers struggled with their own demons. The attrition rate was approaching 50%. With a half-mile to go, disaster struck. Rachel's left knee, an old injury from Iraq, locked up completely. She stumbled, caught herself, tried to continue. The joint wouldn't cooperate. "Medic," someone called out. "No," Rachel gritted her teeth, forcing the leg to move. She'd torn that ACL pulling a pilot from a crashed helicopter. The surgeon said she'd never run again. She'd proved him wrong every day since. Step, drag. A young ranger appeared at her elbow. "Let me help." "Against the rules." "Screw the rules." But he didn't touch her, just matched her pace. "You saved Johnson back there on the ledge. He's my buddy from basic." "Just doing my job." "Yeah, well, I'm doing mine. Rangers don't leave anyone behind. I'll walk with you, but you've got to make it on your own power." They covered the last quarter-mile together, the ranger talking constantly, distracting her from the pain. Stories about his hometown in Texas, his kid's sister starting college, anything to keep her mind off the screaming knee. The finish line appeared through the trees. A crowd had gathered, soldiers who'd already completed the march, instructors tallying times, medics treating injuries. Rachel checked her watch. 3 hours, 54 minutes, plus Morrison's penalty. She crossed the line at 4 hours, 4 minutes. "Hayes, my office, now." Morrison's voice cut through her exhaustion. The ranger started to protest, but Rachel waved him off. She limped after the Admiral, leaving bloody bootprints on the concrete. Morrison's temporary command post was an air-conditioned trailer that felt like heaven after the heat outside. He sat behind a metal desk, Lawson standing at his shoulder. 4 hours, 4 minutes, Morrison said, not inviting her to sit. "You failed." "Sir, with respect, my actual time was—" "I don't care about your actual time. You delayed the exercise for a rescue that wasn't part of the scenario." "A soldier was injured, sir." "And medevac was 30 minutes out. The SEALs could have handled it." Rachel remained silent. She'd seen the angle of those anchors. In sandstone, with a shock load, they would have failed. But arguing wouldn't change Morrison's mind. "Here's what's going to happen," Morrison continued. "You're disqualified from Iron Hawk, but because you did assist with a medical emergency, I won't make it official. You can tell people you were injured, save some face. I'm not injured, sir. Your niece says otherwise. Take the out I'm giving you, Hayes. Go home with some dignity and tact. Rachel straightened, ignoring the lightning bolts of pain from her joint. Respectfully, sir, I completed the march within the time limit. My actual time was 3:54. Morrison's face darkened. Are you questioning my judgment? No, sir, I'm stating facts. Facts, he stood, coming around the desk. Here's a fact: you don't belong here. This program has standards, traditions. We don't lower the bar for anyone. I'm not asking you to lower anything, sir. No, then explain why I should ignore your failure. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Through the window, she could see other soldiers receiving medical attention, high-fiving each other, celebrating their success. She'd outperformed half of them, saved 2 lives, and still failed in Morrison's eyes. Permission to speak freely, sir. Denied. You're dismissed, Hayes. Clear out your gear and report to Transpo. Morrison trailed off, staring at something behind her. Rachel turned to see a figure in the doorway, a woman in her 50s wearing civilian clothes but carrying herself with unmistakable military bearing. Problem, Admiral? The woman asked. Morrison's face went through several expressions before settling on forced politeness. Ma'am, I didn't expect to see you here. I'm sure you didn't. The woman entered, her sharp eyes taking in Rachel's bloody boots and sweat-soaked uniform. Master Sergeant Hayes, I presume. Yes, ma'am. I'm Sarah Chen, Deputy Director of Special Operations Command. I've been observing today's evolution. She turned to Morrison, including your interesting interpretation of the time requirements. Ma'am, I can explain. No need, I heard everything. Chen pulled out a tablet. According to GPS tracking, Sergeant Hayes completed the course in 3 hours, 54 minutes. The medical emergency delay was 8 minutes, during which she saved a soldier's life using technical rescue skills that, frankly, your SEALs were about to botch. Morrison's jaw worked silently. Furthermore, Chen continued, her casualty evacuation at mile 10 set a course record. One that's particularly impressive considering she weighs 140 soaking wet and dragged a 180-pound Marine up a 40-degree grade. Ma'am, with respect, Iron Hawk has always been. A boys' club? Yes, Admiral, I'm aware. That's why I'm here. Chen smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Master Sergeant Hayes stays in the program. Her official time is 3 hours, 54 minutes. Any questions? The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Morrison shook his head. Excellent. Hayes Medical is waiting for you outside. Get that knee looked at. Chen paused at the door. Oh, and Admiral, tomorrow's pool evolution should be interesting. I'll be watching that one too. After she left, Morrison slumped in his chair. Lawson cleared his throat. Sir, should I? Get out, both of you. Outside, Rachel found the ranger waiting with an ice pack. Saw the deputy director arrive. Figured you might need this. She accepted it gratefully, placing it on her swollen knee. Thanks. That was epic what you did out there. The rescue, the casualty evac. Where'd you learn all that? Rachel thought about the truth, the classified operations, the special missions unit she couldn't name, the training that didn't exist on paper. Just picked it up along the way. The ranger laughed. Right, mystery sergeant. Well, whoever you really are, I'm glad you're staying. Morrison needs someone to shake up his worldview. As he walked away, Rachel sat on a bench, finally allowing herself to feel the exhaustion. Day 1 was over, 6 more to go. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unlisted number. Nice work today, keep your head down, things are about to get interesting. Echo 7. Rachel deleted the message immediately. Echo 7 was a call sign she hadn't heard in 2 years from a world she'd left behind, or thought she had. She looked up at the Colorado mountains, now painted gold by the setting sun. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new attempts to break her. Morrison wouldn't give up easily. His pride was wounded, and wounded animals were dangerous. But she'd survived worse than a bitter admiral's grudge. In places where failure meant flag-draped coffins and grieving families, she'd persevered. Iron Hawk was just another mission, another mountain to climb. As soldiers headed to Chow, comparing war stories from the march, Rachel remained on the bench. She pulled out her phone again, scrolling to a contact labeled Home. Her thumb hovered over the call button. Her daughter would be finishing soccer practice about now. 12 years old, all knees and elbows in her father's stubborn streak. She thought her mother was a supply sergeant stationed in Kansas, doing paperwork and staying safe. Rachel put the phone away without calling. Some lies were necessary to protect the people you loved. The medical tent was nearly empty when she finally limped over. A young medic, barely out of training, examined her knee with careful hands. You've got significant swelling, possible ligament strain. I should recommend medical withdrawal. Should. He grinned, but something tells me you wouldn't accept it. Ice, elevation, and this. He handed her a knee brace. Try not to completely destroy the joint before day 7. I'll do my best. As she headed to the barracks, Rachel passed the bulletin board again. The photos of past Iron Hawk graduates seemed to watch her progress. Soon, there might be one more face among them. A face that would make future female soldiers pause and think if she could do it. But first, she had to survive 6 more days of Morrison's fury. The barracks were buzzing with activity when she entered. Soldiers cleaning gear, tending wounds, arguing about who'd performed best. Conversations died as she passed, replaced by whispers and stares. She found her bunk untouched, a small miracle. On the neighboring bed, someone had left an MRE and a bottle of water. No note, but the message was clear. Someone had her back. As she sat down to eat, the 3 SEALs from earlier appeared. They looked uncomfortable, shuffling their feet like schoolboys. We wanted to apologize, one said. For this morning and for the cliff thing, you were right about the anchors. Rachel nodded, accepting the olive branch. We all have things to learn. Chen really tore Morrison a new one, huh? Another asked. I wouldn't know. They laughed. Right, classified, we get it. The leader held out his hand. Peterson, this is Rodriguez and Miller. If you need anything, we've got your 6. After they left, Rachel finally allowed herself a small smile. One day down, minds beginning to change. It was a start. She lay back on the thin mattress, elevating her knee as instructed. Tomorrow was water training, her strongest discipline, though Morrison didn't know that. Let him try to drown her. She'd learned to swim in full gear in waters a lot deadlier than a training pool. Outside, taps played across the base, marking the end of another day. Rachel closed her eyes, not to sleep but to remember. A rooftop in Ramadi. Surrounded, outnumbered, ammunition running low. Her spotter already dead. Radio smashed. No extraction coming. Just her, a rifle, and the certainty that she'd take as many of them as possible before. Hayes. She opened her eyes. A female Air Force captain stood beside her bunk. Ma'am, just wanted to say thanks. For today, what you did took guts. The captain paused. We're having an informal brief in Building 9, the 4 of us. Figured we should stick together, share intel on what's coming. Rachel considered. She'd always been a lone wolf, but this wasn't combat. This was politics with PT mixed in. I'll be there in 20. As the captain left, Rachel sat up, testing her knee. Better already. Tomorrow, Morrison would push harder, devise new ways to force her out. But tonight, she had allies, information, purpose. She looked at the photo of her squad one more time before tucking it away. Martinez, Johnson, Williams, Parker, they'd understand why she was here, why she had to finish this. Not for glory or recognition. Not to prove Morrison wrong, though that would be satisfying. But for every female soldier who'd been told she wasn't good enough. For every girl who dreamed of serving but heard it was a man's world. For her daughter, who might someday follow in footsteps she didn't even know her mother had made. Rachel stood, grabbed her notebook, and headed for Building 9. 6 days left to change some minds. 6 days to show them what a warrior really looked like. The pool complex at Fort Carson was Olympic-sized and deep enough to simulate ocean conditions. At 500 hours, it looked like a black mirror under the artificial lights. Rachel stood with the other candidates, everyone shivering in the pre-dawn cold despite their shorty wetsuits. Admiral Morrison paced the pool deck like a predator. He'd changed tactics overnight. Gone was the blustering antagonist, replaced by cold professionalism. More dangerous, Rachel thought. He'd been embarrassed yesterday and would be looking for payback. Water confidence training, Morrison announced. The ocean doesn't care about your feelings, your gender, or your excuses. It only respects strength and skill. He gestured to the pool. Today you'll prove you can operate in maritime environments. Multiple events, back-to-back, no rest periods. Fail any evolution, you're done. The first event seemed simple. Tread water for 30 minutes. Full utilities, boots, no flotation devices. Rachel had done this countless times in combat swimmer training that officially never happened. Oh, and one more thing, Morrison added, his smile sharp. To simulate combat conditions, we'll be introducing stressors. Instructors appeared carrying poles with thick pads on the ends, dunking sticks. The candidates entered the water in groups of 20. Rachel felt the familiar shock of cold, the immediate drag of waterlogged clothing. She settled into an efficient egg-beater kick, conserving energy. 5 minutes in, the instructors struck. They moved through the swimmers, pushing heads underwater, holding them down for 5, 10, 15 seconds, testing panic responses. Rachel's turn came at minute 8. The pad pressed down on her skull, driving her under. She didn't fight it that wasted oxygen. Instead, she relaxed, counting seconds, waiting. The pressure released at 12 seconds, and she surfaced smoothly, resuming her rhythm. Good recovery, Hayes, Chief Lawson observed. Let's see how you handle this. He nodded to another instructor who brought over a water hose. The stream hit Rachel full in the face, a liquid punch that drove water up her nose into her mouth. She turned her head, maintained position, breathed when she could. Around her, others weren't faring as well. A ranger started panicking when held under too long, thrashing wildly. 2 instructors pulled him out, evolution failed. A Marine tried to grab the dunking pole, an automatic disqualification. By minute 20, half the group was out. Rachel's legs burned, but she'd trained for worse. In the Arabian Gulf, she'd treaded water for 2 hours waiting for extraction after a mission went sideways. Morrison appeared above her, studying her technique. Getting tired, Hayes? No, sir. Her voice was steady despite the exhaustion. Really? Then you won't mind this. He signaled an instructor who dumped a bucket of ice into the water near her. The cold hit like electricity, muscles seizing. Rachel forced herself to keep moving, knowing that stopping meant sinking. Her body wanted to curl up, preserve heat, but she maintained the steady kick that kept her afloat. Time, Lawson called it 30 minutes. Candidates hauled themselves out, legs like jelly. Rachel's knee protested loudly, but she masked the limp. No weakness, not in front of Morrison. 5-minute break, Morrison announced. Then the fun really begins. The fun was underwater, not tying. Candidates had to dive to 15 feet, tie a specific knot on a rope, surface, breathe, repeat. 5 different knots, increasingly complex, with instructors monitoring for accuracy. This was where Rachel knew she'd excel. Her hands had tied these knots in pitch-black water under fire with enemies hunting above. A heated pool with good visibility was practically vacation. She executed each knot perfectly, surfacing smoothly between dives. Others struggled with the pressure, the breath holding, the manual dexterity required at depth. A SEAL candidate passed out on his 4th dive and had to be rescued. Morrison watched her complete the evolution, his expression darkening. He whispered something to Lawson, who nodded and jogged away. The 3rd event was the 50-meter underwater swim. No fins, no goggles, just lungs and determination. Touch the far wall or surface early, you fail. Rachel hyperventilated carefully, not too much or she'd black out. She'd learned the technique from a Filipino commando who could swim 100 meters on one breath. The key was efficiency, not speed. She slipped under, opening her eyes despite the chlorine sting. Long, smooth strokes, minimal drag. Her lungs started complaining at 20 meters. By 35, they screamed for air. At 40, spots danced in her vision. 10 meters from the wall, her body rebelled. Every instinct demanded she surface. Instead, she kicked harder, stretching for those last few strokes. Her hand hit tile, and she pushed off the bottom, breaking surface with a gasping breath. 47 meters, an instructor announced. She surfaced early. Rachel's head snapped up. I touched the wall. I didn't see it. That's because you were checking your phone, another candidate interjected. The female Air Force captain from last night, treading water nearby. I saw her touch. Morrison appeared. Are you calling my instructor a liar, Captain Torres? No, sir, I'm stating what I observed. The tension stretched taut. Finally, Morrison shrugged. Fine, Hayes passes, barely. The morning continued with rescue drills, equipment recovery, and combat swimming. Rachel excelled at each, her mysterious background serving her well. By midday, the candidate pool had shrunk by another 1/3. During the lunch break, She sat with Tors and the other two women who'd survived the morning. That was bullshit, Tors said quietly. The instructor wasn't even watching. Doesn't matter, Rachel replied. We knew it would be like this. Does it ever piss you off? Asked Sergeant Kim, a Korean-American soldier from the 82nd Airborne. Having to be twice as good to get half the credit. Rachel thought about the medal ceremonies she'd missed because her missions were classified. The promotions delayed because someone thought she'd reached her potential. The assumptions that every achievement came from lowered standards rather than exceeded ones. Every day, she admitted, but anger is fuel if you use it right. Lieutenant Nash, a quiet intelligence officer, spoke up. I heard Morrison talking to the SOCOM observer. He's planning something special for this afternoon, something about testing your story. Before Rachel could ask what that meant, the recall whistle blew. Time for the afternoon evolution. The candidates gathered around a different pool, the dive tank, 30 feet deep, used for pressure training and equipment familiarity. Morrison stood beside a pile of gear. Combat divers need to problem-solve under pressure, he began. Your task is simple. Dive to the bottom, assemble this equipment, and surface. You have 10 minutes. Rachel studied the gear, standard scuba setup, but something was off. The regulators were mixed models, the hoses tangled, and there, the tank valves had been reversed. What should take 2 minutes would take 8 if you caught all the tricks. Hayes, Morrison called out, you're first. Of course she was. Rachel geared up methodically, checking each piece. She'd learned long ago that rushing underwater killed people. At Morrison's signal, she entered the water and descended. The pressure built steadily, a familiar embrace. At the bottom, she found the additional surprise. The equipment was scattered across the tank floor, some pieces wedged under training obstacles. She worked systematically, retrieving each component. The reversed valves almost caught her. Muscle memory wanted to turn them the wrong way. But she'd assembled gear in worse conditions, with bullets pinging off the hull above her. 7 minutes later, she surfaced with a fully functional scuba rig. Morrison's scowl deepened. Lawson checked that equipment. The chief inspected every connection, tested every valve. It's perfect, sir. Run it again. Sir. She had an advantage seeing the layout. Run it again, different configuration. Rachel bit back her response. She'd play his game. While instructors reset the equipment, she noticed Chen, the deputy director, standing in the observation area. Their eyes met briefly. The second run was harder. Morrison had added obstacles, nets to navigate, locks to pick, all while assembling the gear. Rachel's injured knee screamed as she kicked through the restrictions, but she completed the task in 9 minutes 40 seconds. Again, Morrison ordered. By the fourth run, other candidates were getting restless. A green beret stepped forward. Sir, we're burning daylight. Don't we all need to complete this evolution? Morrison turned on him. You questioning my training plans, Sergeant? No, sir, just nodding that Hayes has proven she can do it, 4 times. When I want your opinion. He's right. Everyone turned. Chen had descended from the observation area, her face neutral but eyes hard. Sergeant Hayes has successfully completed the task multiple times. Unless you're testing equipment rather than personnel, it's time to move on. Morrison's jaw worked. Ma'am, as course director, I have discretion. You do, within reason. This has passed reasonable and entered personal. Continue with the evolution. As Morrison stalked away, Chen caught Rachel's arm. Stay sharp, he's not done with you. The afternoon ground on with more diving challenges. Each time, Morrison found ways to make Rachel's tests harder. Extra weight on her belt, damaged equipment to repair, complex problems that required solutions he thought she couldn't know. But Rachel had spent 2 years with Delta Force's combat divers, learning from the best in the business. Every trick Morrison pulled, she'd seen in places where failure meant mission failure, not course failure. By evening, she'd noticed something else. Morrison's persecution was backfiring. Other candidates were starting to root for her, offering quiet encouragement, even stepping in when instructors tried dubious tactics. During the final evolution, a combat equipment swim in full gear. Peterson, the SEAL who'd apologized yesterday, swam alongside her. Morrison's losing it, he said during a rest break. Half the instructors think he's gone too far. Doesn't matter what they think, Rachel replied, adjusting her rifle sling. Maybe not, but word's getting around about who you really are. Rachel's stroke faltered for just a second. I'm Master Sergeant Hayes, that's all. Peterson grinned. Right, and I'm just a sailor who likes to swim. He kicked away before she could respond. They finished the swim as darkness fell. Rachel hauled herself out of the pool, every muscle screaming, her knee on fire. She'd completed every evolution, survived Morrison's targeted harassment, and earned something more valuable than the Admiral's approval, the respect of her peers. In the locker room, she finally allowed herself to collapse on a bench. The knee brace was soaked through, offering minimal support. She'd need to ice it aggressively tonight or risk failing tomorrow's land navigation course. Tors appeared with a bag of ice and elastic wrap. Figured you'd need this. Thanks, Rachel accepted the help, too tired for pride. That thing Peterson said, about who you really are, what did he mean? Rachel focused on wrapping her knee. No idea. Tors studied her. You know, I did some digging after yesterday. Your official record is thin, but there are gaps. Deployments that don't match unit histories, awards with no citations, time at Fort Bragg when your unit was supposedly in Kuwait.